You're listening to The Morning Show with Dave Hyde on 99.2 Hermitage FM, online and on your smart speaker.
So with Mark Kelly's marathon with this time, and I've got Mark Kelly on the phone. Hi Mark, how are you? How's life been treating you over the last couple of months?
It's been fairly busy, what with the release of the Marathon album and working on the next Marillion album. I've been keeping busy, to be honest.
Oh, that's good. It's always nice to have things to work on, especially when you've got like your own sort of headspace at the moment, isn't it, when we've been locked away?
Yeah, I mean, the lockdown for me wasn't so bad because I had a chance to work on this Marathon album that I've been in the pipeline for a number of years, and it gave me a bit of time to actually make it. I mean, it was different to normal recording because it was all done separately. The different members of the band recorded their parts and sent them to me, and then I stuck it all together, but it worked out pretty well in the end.
Did they have their own studios at home to do it, or were you doing it remotely into, like, say, your studio, that sort of thing?
Well, no, everybody was working from home. To be honest, these days, the only person in a band that needs a studio as such with a acoustic treated room, it would be the drummer. And the drummer, Henry Rogers, he's got his own studio. He does a lot of session work from home, so that worked out fine. You know, with guitars and keyboards and even vocals, you just need a room, really, and a computer. A lot of it simulated amplifiers and simulated keyboard sounds, and it's all virtual these days.
Do you mix the actual album together?
The album was mixed by a chap called Andy Bradfield. He's a fairly well-known mix engineer, and I think he did a fantastic job. But I put it all together, So basically, I would send the sort of rough version to a member of the band and say, right, can you play the guitars? Do the guitars for real, and then they would send them to me, and I'd add them into the track. Quite often, I would say, "Oh, can you do it a bit different?" Or we'd talk on the phone, on FaceTime or whatever, and maybe he'd play me some ideas over the phone of what he thought might work, and I'd say, "Oh yeah, do it like that." It was a bit slower than being everybody in the room together, but I quite like working on my own in that way. Even with Marillion, I'll record a lot of my parts at home. It gives me time to think and work things out,
It's a completely different way to working as we see it on the outside world, where you're used to going into the studio, having someone sit behind a desk, but then it seems like that extra part, that bit where you're a bit distant, where you can say, well, actually, I've been working on this, can you try this? You can't, it gives you a bit more scope within the record.
I think that, there's advantages to both ways of working. I think working as a band, all in the room together, playing together, you can play off each other, and the excitement of being, actually in the room together playing, you can't really replace that. And it does generate a certain type of performance. But if you've got the time to try things on your own, you can make mistakes in the privacy of your own home, as it were, and not worry about what people are thinking. Like, if you do something pretty crazy and that probably won't pay off, you can just wipe it and start again, So there's advantages to both ways of working, and I think it depends at what stage you are at in the making of a record, what works best, really.
I like the music stories. I like knowing about albums, like knowing how people record things. I think you save a bit of money by doing it that way, because you're only paying for your technician, your engineer's time in the studio for what you pass over. You're not doing take after take and paying for, no, we didn't like that, do it again, because you're doing it and you're a band member.
Yeah, I think in the old days, you used to feel a lot of pressure for the amount of money you were spending, because you'd hire a commercial studio and it would be, £1,000 a day or whatever. So there's always that pressure of wasting money if you try things that don't work. And also tape as well, because in those days it was all on tape. And those big reels of 2-inch tape, they were only like 15 minutes long, and they were like about £100 each. So you couldn't really afford to be too wasteful and experimental and trying things and recording things that didn't work, or you'd have to erase them and start again, So working on hard drives and computers, working at home, it really gives people a lot more opportunity to be, spend more time. Although that's not necessarily a good thing. Sometimes, things can sound overworked and too clean or too precise, because there's a temptation to tidy everything up and make it all really clean and absolutely spot on in time. And sometimes the looseness of a band playing in a room can be charming in itself, Well,
you've got that energy to bounce off each other, haven't you? That look of looking around, getting into it.
Yeah, well, and certainly with Marillion, I mean, we still create our best music when we're all in a room together, just jamming, and just seeing what happens. There's an excitement to that, and a danger to not knowing what's going to come next that keeps it fresh,
Yeah. Totally get it. And with Marillion, obviously, you've been formed since, 1978? I think it was.
Well, the band sort of started at the back end of the 1970s. I joined in 81. So I'm coming up for my 40th year next year.
What's it like going on tour with the guys still?
We still have fun. We don't tour so much this year. We haven't toured at all. In fact, we weren't even planning to tour this year, so it's actually been not a terrible year for us. I mean, I know a lot of bands have had to cancel touring plans and all the rest of it. It's been pretty grim for road crews as well, earning no money. But we hadn't really planned to tour this year anyway, so it was a bit of a lucky escape for us. But when we go on tour, we really enjoy it. Our last tour at the back end of 2019, we did a little it was like with friends from the orchestra. We had a half dozen orchestral players with us as well, and it was really enjoyable. We played a couple of nights sold out at the Royal Albert Hall. We did a bunch of other dates around Europe, and it was good fun.
I won't be honest, I watched some of the videos from the Royal Albert Hall while getting ready for the interview. That set looked amazing.
It was fun, and these days with those huge video screens and the stuff you can do visually these days would have been completely out of our price range a number of years ago. But these days it's not so expensive that even a sort of mid-sized band like us can afford to do it. So you can put on a pretty special show, especially if the music's good.
And is that what you're going to be doing with Marathon?
I don't know, to be honest. What I do with Marathon really depends on the response to this album. It's been out less than a week. The feedback I've had has been amazing. I've had some really nice reviews, and lots of people, on Facebook and stuff like that, been very positive and, great things, people have been saying. So I'm hoping that it manages to reach a new audience, or at least reach, enough of the Marillion audience that we can do some gigs. The band play really well together. So, after we recorded the album, we actually got together at a studio owned by Peter Gabriel, Real World Studios near Bath. And, some of us hadn't even met before, and we got together and we were there for 2 days. We did some filming and recording, and it sounded great. So I'm really keen to take it on the road.
I'll be honest, I had to listen to the album over the last couple of days. You do all this stuff, and I think it's brilliant.
Thank you.
I think there's bits in there that you don't expect to come through, and then all of a sudden it pops up in a song.
Well, that's great, thank you.
Absolutely brilliant. And I didn't know that you also played with Travis.
I did a summer of festivals with them a few years back. That came about because of a friend of mine called Adam Wakeman. He's the son of Rick Wakeman, also a keyboard player.
Yeah. And
Adam was the sort of regular keyboard player with Travis, because they don't have a keyboard player in the band. It's just the four of them. Mm-hmm. And but when they tour, they take a keyboard player out, and that was what Adam was doing at the time. But I think what happened was he was touring with Ozzy Osbourne, so Travis were looking for somebody to basically stand in for Adam, and Adam suggested me. So that was how I got that gig. And it was fun. I mean, they're really nice guys. We had a really nice time together. I did about half a dozen big festivals like the Isle of Wight, Tea in the Park and stuff, and a few smaller gigs. And yeah, it was an enjoyable... We made a change from Marillion. It was a bit of a last minute thing. I literally had a phone call from their manager saying, would you like to do these festivals? And I'm like, well, how long do I have to decide? And he said, 15 minutes.
Oh,
and I'm like, oh God. So I quickly phoned Adam and I said, how hard is it? He said, it's easy, don't worry, you'll be fine. So I phoned back and I said, yeah, I'll do it. So
brilliant.
That's what happened.
Well, it's, I just sit there and think back to the 2000s for myself. They were an absolute massive band, and I remember them teeing apart festivals and things like that. Back around then,
well, it was a big one for them because they were obviously from Scotland, and the Tea in the Park was a big Scottish festival.
Yeah, it's the home.
Yeah, it was great. It was really good fun.
Was it around that time as well? Did you do the Glastonbury tour with them as well when it was on Glastonbury?
No, I think the Glastonbury one was like a year or two before. This was 2005, I think, when I did those dates with them. But we've played, I've played some pretty big festivals with Marillion over the years as well, so it's not...
When you're with Marillion, what sort of festivals, or what sort of, when you go out with the audience, do they expect you to do some of the classics as well as some of the new stuff?
We don't really take much notice of what people expect. I mean, we've got a catalogue of 18, 19 albums now, so it's always difficult to decide what to play. for a number of years, we sort of steered away from playing the old Fish songs like Kaylee and stuff. But these days, it's we'll chuck in anything just to mix it up. It's good from our point of view, it's good to play different things rather than playing the same songs over and over and getting bored with them. So we might have old favourites that we don't play for 5 years, and then we'll put them back in the set again. It's good to have so much to choose from, but there's always people are going to be, oh, why don't you play this? Why don't you play that? Or they'll go, oh, I'm so glad you played that song that you haven't played for 20 years. So it's fun.
Well, the new album's obviously Mark Kelly's Marathon. It's out on the 27th, which is a couple of days back. Are you enjoying doing the press at the moment for that? Are the guys excited hearing the song being played on the radio?
Well, I think for the band, because they're mostly not really had any records out or releases themselves. I think they're enjoying it. Henry, the drummer, has played with a number of other bands, so he's sort of used to it. But I think for Ollie, our singer, he started off with a lot of promise in his career very early on. Young band. He was like 15 when he first played at Glastonbury, and it seemed like it was all going to happen for him. And then I don't know, something went badly wrong, and the band split up. And then he sort of got disillusioned, and now he's like 40. And I think he never expected that he was going to be playing back in a band again.
Go full circle.
I found him because I spent about a year looking for a singer, and I was sort of going on Spotify and checking out all these unknown bands, and there's so many of them. Just trying to find a decent singer, and I came across this band called Big Blue Ball, and I was like, oh, this singer's great. He sounds a lot like Peter Gabriel, but he sounds, he's a really good singer. Anyway, it turns out, I checked it out, and it was Peter Gabriel. So that was like, okay. I mentioned this in an interview, and a friend of mine read the interview and said, I know just the guy for you. And it was Ollie. They'd worked together, and he'd heard his singing and said that, he's got a certain Peter Gabriel quality to his voice.
Yeah, I can hear that.
It wasn't necessarily what I was looking for, but I think he fits in perfectly with the music. It's good.
No, as I say, it's a fantastic album. I encourage everyone to go out and get it. Obviously, the single off that around the same time, I think, was This Time.
Yeah.
And then before that, you had Amelia.
That's right, yeah. Amelia, I think it's not really a single. It's 10 minutes long. It's a song about Amelia Earhart, the aviator she tried to, she was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic, and then she tried to fly around the Earth, circumnavigate the globe in a small plane. Went missing in 1937, this was. And nobody really knows what happened, although there were some things found, like some bones on a beach and an empty sextant box and a few bits of leather. And so they obviously they're pretty sure that she came to a bad ending. So the songs are sort of, it's partly historical about her and this navigator Fred Noonan, and then it's sort of speculative about what might have happened to them. But it's 10 minutes long. It's not really a traditional single, but I think I put that one out first because it sort of represents more of what the album's like. I wanted an album that takes people on a journey rather than a collection of short pop songs, Whereas This Time is a sort of 3.5 minute, hopefully quite accessible song, more in the vein of the Beatles or Squeeze or something like that, really.
Yeah, the album flows like a story. As you say, it's nice to know the background of them. And I say with Amelia, I thought it's quite interesting. And this is me personally. I like watching silly things online, or, you go down a rabbit hole. And I didn't realise until I listened to your single, I sort of went, oh, who is Amelia Earhart? I didn't realise they're still trying to find the plane.
There's an organisation that basically searches for wrecks, and I think they're still looking, yeah. The shame of it was that they found these 13 bones, and they got sent off to somebody in Fiji, I think it was, but they've gone missing now, so they don't really know whether, of course these days they could have done DNA testing to find out whether it was a man or a woman's bones. But intriguing story. That opens the album, and then there's a song called 2051 that closes the album that sort of explores, I suppose, the search for extraterrestrials, and it starts off talking about or singing about 2001, the story of the book and the movie, Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote the book, and Stanley Kubrick, the director of the movie, and how their relationship turned sour because they couldn't really agree with each other about how things should go. Then it explores more about what might actually happen if we were visited by aliens, and of course Stephen Hawking, the astrophysicist, warned that maybe we shouldn't really be sending signals into outer space, and we might get unwanted attention, and an
answer back that we don't want.
Yeah, the alien visitors might not be friendly, So that's sort of what that song. But it's a journey. It's like 15 minutes long, and hopefully a journey that people will enjoy.
Well, I've got to be honest. After a couple of weeks of doing a few interviews, I've got some great advice for that song. there is a band, they're called Aliens Don't Ring Doorbells.
Right.
And I love the fact that they're called Aliens Don't Ring Doorbells, so if you can ever slot that one in, we know Aliens Don't Ring Doorbells, they rock.
That's great.
I've loved it. I've listened to every single part of the album, and I say it's been absolutely brilliant to listen to. And there's a song on there called Puppets.
Puppets, I think, is a good representative of the album. It's not too long. It's about 7 minutes long. It's a song about free will, basically. So, yeah, hope people enjoy it.
Well, Mark Kelly's Marathons album is out now. You can go over to their website. Mark, what's the website?
The website is marathonsounds.com. But if you did a search for Mark Kelly's Marathon on Google or whatever, I'm sure you would find it and the Facebook page and all the rest of it. So,
well, we know people are going to go over there and buy this straight away because it is a great album. So here is Puppets from Mark Kelly's Marathons album. Mark, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, David. Good to talk.
Thanks again, Mark.
You're listening to The Morning Show with Dave Hyde on 99.2 Hermitage FM, online and on your smart speaker.